The words of C.S. Lewis, which he had spoken the previous evening in one of his many unread books, found echoed in his head. The smallest decisions we meet every day shape us inexorably into the person we become. This words met him with special power as he let his gaze wander around the room. Let everyone object, and it's at home. The result was one decision. The decision to do something, to buy, to keep, or to keep. And all these small decisions had itself to one crushing burden piled up. Thomas was not a Messi, quite in the opposite. From the outside considered, he introduced successful life as economic advisor, lived in a well-kept 3-room apartment in a respected district, and was considered under friends than the organized type. But under the superficial orderly facade hid itself one subtler form of abundance. A collection of objects that individually considered harmless appeared in their entirety, however one represented an invisible burden. With his second coffee in hand, he began systematically through his apartment to go. In the kitchen he did not find fewer as 3 coffee machines, a classical filter machine, a high-quality fully automatic machines, and a stylish capsule machine that he before 2 years in one bought with a touch of enthusiasm for Italian espresso had. Every this machines represented a phase of his life, a particular performance of who he wanted to be or should be. In the bathroom cabinet, he discovered a collection half-used-up skincare products, vitamin preparations with expired expiration date, and fitness gadgets that have long since forgotten New Year's resolutions testified. Each this products was with one promise connected, the promise one better version of himself. But instead of him closer to this ideal to bring, appears she him only to it to remember how far from it was removed. His wardrobe told one similar history. Suits from his early career phase, when he believed the success would be in the perfect outer appearance. Casual clothes that he wears for hobbies bought had that he never really exercised. And quite behind, almost forgotten, the worn but infinite comfortable sweatpants from his student days. One of the few items of clothing that he wore regularly and that actually brought joy. When he left his study entered, was him the true dimension of his accumulation consciously. Here the material leftovers past ambitions. A high-quality drawing tablet for digital art, which he never correct learned had, specialist literature to topics that once interested, and countless gadgets that all solve a problem should that he without she maybe not at all had would have. The realization met him how one gentle wave. This objects were not only physical ballast, but also emotional anchors that have held him in the past held on. Each unused object represented not only wasted money, but also one unfulfilled hope, a not realized dream, a version of himself that he never had become. With this insight, Thomas's transformation began. He decided to systematically get rid of the things that no longer enriched his life. But he quickly realized that this process was more than just a simple sorting out. It was a profound examination of his values, desires, and identity. First, he addressed the obvious candidates. The broken appliances he wanted to fix someday, the clothes he hadn't worn in years, the gifts he had kept out of pure politeness. With each item he sorted out, he felt a growing lightness, as if he was not only creating physical space, but also gaining mental space. But then he got to the more difficult cases, the things with emotional significance. The old guitar he had played in his youth that now sat gathering dust in the corner. The collection of antiquarian books that he had acquired more for prestige reasons than out of genuine interest. The expensive sports equipment that testified to ambitious but unrealistic fitness goals. For each of these items, he had to honestly ask himself, does this still bring me joy? Does it serve a real purpose in my life? Or am I just holding on to an idea that no longer suits me? Dealing with these questions led to surprising realizations. He discovered that many of his possessions had more to do with societal expectations and external pressures than with his true needs and desires. The expensive designer furniture in his living room, for example, bought to make an impression but never really comfortable. Or the extensive wine collection that he had built up more out of supposed cultivation than out of real passion. He found it particularly difficult to sort out memorabilia. Every souvenir, every letter, every old photo seemed to tell a story that he did not want to lose. But here, too, he learned to distinguish between the few, truly meaningful memorabilia that touched his heart and the massive objects that only evoked superficial nostalgia. He developed a strategy. Before he got rid of sentimental objects, he photographed them. This way he could preserve the memory without keeping the physical baggage. For particularly valuable items, he asked friends and family if they would be interested in them. It felt good to make loved ones happy and at the same time know that the items were in good hands. Over time, Thomas noticed a fundamental change in his perception. He began to see things not as status symbols or promises for the future, but as tools that should serve his present life. This new perspective also changed his purchasing behavior. Before purchasing something new, he now asked himself, will this item really enrich my life? Or is it just adding another layer of unnecessary possessions? The transformation of his home also had an unexpected effect on his social relationships. Friends who visited him noticed the change. The atmosphere in his apartment had become different, clearer, calmer, more inviting. Many were curious and asked about his motives. This led to deep conversations about consumption, possessions, and what is really important in life. Some of his friends were inspired by his development and began their own journey of letting go. Thomas was happy to share his experiences and insights, but always stressed that everyone had to find their own way. What was superfluous for him could be of great importance for someone else. One particularly moving moment came when he was going through his extensive library. For years he had collected books, many of them unread, but all of them treasured as symbols of his intellectual ambitions. Now he went through each volume and asked himself honestly, am I really going to read this book? Does it have lasting value for me? He rearranged the books he kept, no longer as imposing wall decorations, but as a curated collection of works that really moved or inspired him. With each item discarded, the newly gained space became a canvas for more conscious decisions. In his study, he created a minimalist but inspiring atmosphere. The old, cluttered desk gave way to a simple model made of light wood. The walls, once hung with diplomas and certificates, were now adorned with a single, carefully selected piece of art that really meant something to him. The kitchen went from being a place of unused appliances to a functional space where every utensil had its purpose and its own place. He kept only the one coffee machine that he really used and enjoyed, and found that his morning coffee actually tasted better because of it, perhaps because it was now a conscious choice and not just one of many options. In the living room, he replaced the imposing but uncomfortable designer furniture with a few high-quality pieces that were both aesthetically pleasing and really comfortable. The room became a place for relaxation and meeting people, no longer an exhibition of his supposed status. The biggest surprise, however, was the effect on his emotional well-being. The more he let go, the lighter he felt, not only physically but mentally as well. The constant underlying tension that came from all the unfinished projects and unused opportunities gave way to an inner peace. He developed a new appreciation for quality over quantity, not only in material things, but also in relationships and experiences. He now invested his free time more consciously. Instead of spending hours scrolling through online shops, he spent more time in nature, with friends or with a few, but meaningful hobbies that really gave him joy. The principle of letting go also carried over into other areas of his life. He began to use his time and energy more consciously, to reduce unnecessary obligations and to concentrate on what was really important to him. His appointments became fewer but more meaningful. His social contacts became more selective but more profound. A year after his first conscious look through the foggy apartment, Thomas's life was fundamentally different. His home was no longer a repository of unused possibilities and unfulfilled dreams, but a place that reflected his current values and needs. Every object had its place and purpose, every piece of furniture its story and meaning. But the most important thing was the inner change. He had learned that true freedom does not consist in having everything, but in knowing what you really need. C.S. Lewis' words had come true. The many small decisions to let go of things had actually made him a different person. The morning mist that still occasionally shone through his window now cast their light on a room that radiated clarity and purpose. Thomas's home had become a place defined not by the quantity of his possessions, but by the quality of the moments lived within it. And in this newfound simplicity, he discovered a richness he had never found in all his accumulations, the richness of the freedom to be fully himself. His story became a quiet inspiration for others who longed for a more conscious, meaningful life, not as a loud revolution against consumerism, but as a gentle invitation to find one's own path to letting go. Because in the end, as Thomas had learned, it's not about not owning anything, but about not being possessed by your possessions. With this realization, his transformation came full circle. What had started as a simple cleaning project had become a profound lesson about life. And as he enjoyed his morning coffee at his tidy desk, he realized that his journey of letting go would never end. Rather, it had become an ongoing process of growth and self-discovery. The morning sun, which shone through the now unobstructed windows, bathed the room in a warm, inviting light. Thomas watched the steam rise from his coffee cup and curl in the air, a moment of silence and clarity that he would have hardly noticed in his busy, everyday life. In such moments, he became aware of how much not only his external environment, but also his inner perception had changed. His new philosophy of life had also made itself felt in his professional life. As a business consultant, he began to not only teach his clients financial strategies, but also subtly weave in the principles of simplification and conscious consumption. He noticed that many of his clients were fighting similar struggles, trapped in a cycle of accumulation and the constant search for more, without finding real fulfillment. The regular visits from his sister Lisa became a particular highlight. She, who had initially viewed his transformation with skepticism, became one of his biggest supporters. They now spent quality time together instead of wandering around shopping malls looking for the next must-have item as they used to. Their conversations became deeper, more meaningful, freed from the superficial distraction of material things. Some evenings, as he walked through his apartment, he would stop in front of one or another of the remaining objects and reflect on their history. Each of these objects no longer spoke of unfulfilled dreams or societal expectations, but of conscious choices and real needs. Even the few photos he still had on the walls now seemed more powerful in their message, no longer lost in a flood of meaningless decorations. His friends noticed that he was more present in conversations, listened more attentively, and responded more thoughtfully, as if decluttering his physical space had also cleared his mental space. He found himself more often in deep discussions that focused on essential life questions rather than superficial status symbols or material success. The concept of time management had taken on a whole new meaning for him. Instead of spending his free time organizing, cleaning, and managing possessions, he now had space for real hobbies and personal growth. He began meditating, took time to read the few but carefully selected books in his library, and even rediscovered his old passion for playing the piano, this time not out of a sense of duty, but out of genuine joy in music. His relationship with consumption had changed fundamentally. When he bought something new, it was now a thoughtful, conscious decision. He had learned to distinguish between real needs and fleeting desires. This was not about strict asceticism or renunciation, but about a balanced, sustainable way of life that benefited both his personal well-being and the environment. His calendar now contained more entries for experiences than for errands. Hikes in nature, concerts, gatherings with friends for a meal together, activities that created memories rather than just accumulating more items. He found that these intangible experiences often contributed more to his life satisfaction than any purchase, no matter how well thought out. The seasons came and went, and with them his understanding of ownership and letting go evolved. Spring became a time of renewal, when he reviewed his habits and needs. Summer invited minimalist ease and outdoor activities. Autumn brought moments of reflection on transience and essentiality. And winter became a time of coziness, when the few but meaningful things in his home could unfold their full effect. 2 years after his initial awakening, his life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. His apartment was not only tidy and organized, it had become a sanctuary, a place of calm and inspiration. Each room had developed its own character, marked by functionality and personal meaning rather than random accumulation. At his workplace, he became a quiet mentor to colleagues who were impressed by his balanced nature and efficiency. Without proselytizing, he showed by example how a reduced, conscious lifestyle could lead to greater productivity and satisfaction. His office corner became a model, clearly structured but inviting, minimal but personal. The biggest change, however, was in his relationships. Freed from the constant preoccupation with material things, he had more emotional and mental capacity for real connections. His conversations became more authentic, his friendships deeper. He learned to differentiate between valuable connections and superficial contacts and relationships, without being judgmental or exclusive. For him, the concept of minimalism had evolved from a trendy lifestyle movement into a deeply rooted philosophy of life. It was no longer about having a certain number of possessions or conforming to a predetermined ideal. Rather, it had become a personal practice of continually questioning what was really important in life and which things, both material and immaterial, serve this important purpose. In quiet moments, when he reflected on his transformation, he realized that letting go of material things had only been the beginning of a much deeper journey. It had taught him to recognize and let go of other forms of baggage as well: negative thought patterns, unhealthy relationships, outdated beliefs. The physical space he had created had become a mirror of his inner clarity. His story inspired others to find their own way of letting go, not as a strict set of rules or a dogmatic system, but as an invitation to self-reflection and conscious living. Everyone who visited him felt the special atmosphere in his home, a mixture of lightness and meaning that inspired many to rethink their own lives and their relationship to material things. With each new day, his conviction grew stronger that true happiness lay not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the freedom that came from conscious reduction. His life had become richer precisely because he had less. And as he set out on his morning walk, the early morning mist around him and the rising sun on the horizon, he knew he was on the right path, not to a goal, but to an ever deeper realization of what really mattered in life. With each new day, his conviction grew stronger that true happiness lay not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the freedom that came from conscious reduction. His life had become richer precisely because he had less. And as he set out on his morning walk, the early morning mist around him and the rising sun on the horizon, he knew he was on the right path, not to a goal, but to an ever deeper realization of what really mattered in life. As the years passed, Thomas's transformation became a source of inspiration for an ever-widening circle of people. His story spread by word of mouth, first in his immediate environment, then beyond his workplace into the wider community. People came to him, not looking for a quick fix or a magic formula, but drawn by the authentic calm and clarity that radiated from his life. One cool autumn morning, as the leaves fell from the trees in every shade of gold imaginable, he received an unexpected invitation. A local community group asked him to share his experiences in a small workshop. At first, he was hesitant. The last thing he wanted was to come across as a self-proclaimed guru. But after careful consideration, he saw it as an opportunity to help others on their own journey without imposing his perspective on them. The workshop was a moving experience for everyone involved. In a small, simply furnished room, the participants shared their stories of abundance and the desire for change. Thomas listened, shared his own experiences, and repeatedly emphasized that everyone has to find their own individual way of letting go. He spoke of the challenges, the emotional highs and lows, but also of the deep satisfaction that could arise from a more conscious approach to material things. His professional expertise as a business consultant proved to be surprisingly valuable. He was able to combine the practical, financial aspects of letting go with the emotional and psychological dimensions. He showed how a simplified lifestyle could not only increase personal well-being, but also lead to greater financial freedom and security. In his free time, he began to record his thoughts and experiences in a personal journal, not with the intention of publishing them, but as a way to reflect and document his own development. The pages filled with observations, insights, and little everyday wisdom. He wrote about the subtle changes in his perception, how he had learned to find beauty in simplicity, and how his understanding of success and satisfaction had changed. His apartment became a living example of what a minimalist lifestyle could look like without feeling sterile or impersonal. Each room told a story of conscious choice and meaningful use. The few pieces of furniture he kept were of high quality and appreciated daily. The walls were adorned with select artworks that had deep personal meaning for him. Even his kitchen, once overflowing with unused appliances, had now become a place of creativity and enjoyment, where every utensil had its purpose and story. Over time, he realized that his influence went far beyond the topic of material possessions. People came to him to talk about life choices, career changes, or personal relationships. They instinctively sensed that his experience of letting go contained a universal truth that could be applied to all areas of life. On his 50th birthday, which he celebrated with a small group of close friends, he realized how much his life had changed in the past few years. The celebration took place in his garden, which he had now transformed into a little paradise. Not a lavish party with mountains of presents and superficial conversations, but an intimate gathering with people who were really important to him. They shared a simple but lovingly prepared meal, good conversations, and real connection. His friends had respected his request not to bring material gifts. Instead, each shared a personal story or memory that connected them to Thomas. These intangible gifts meant more to him than any physical present ever could. They were testament to the deep connections he had built over the years, the lives he had touched, and the changes he had inspired in others. In the quiet hours after the ceremony, as he sat alone in his garden, looking at the stars, he reflected on the long journey he had taken. From a man who had allowed his possessions to define and suffocate him, to someone who had found true fulfillment in simplicity. He thought of all the people who had become part of this journey, the lessons he had learned, and the many moments of realization and growth. His story was to one living proof for that true change possible was not through radical upheavals or strict rules, but through conscious, continuous decisions and the willingness to pattern to let go. Being life was to one example for that become like simplicity and significance go hand in hand could, as fewer actually more be could, and like the path of letting go to one deeper form of wealth lead could. When he went to bed that night, he felt a depth gratitude for everything he had, not for material possessions, but for the clarity of mind, the peace of heart, and the authentic relationships that enriched his life. He knew that his journey of letting go and self-discovery still not was over, but he was happy on every another step on this path, because he had learned that the true adventure of life was in the credit, but in being, not in the collecting, but in the growing, not in the hold on, but in the letting go.